Jumbo Creates a Sensation by P.T. Barnum. Jumbo, the largest elephant ever seen, either wild or in captivity, had been, for many years, one of the chief attractions of the Royal Zoological Gardens, London. I had often looked wistfully on Jumbo, but with no hope of ever getting possession of him, as I knew him to be a great favorite of Queen Victoria, whose children and grandchildren are among the tens of thousands of British juveniles whom Jumbo has carried on his back. I did not suppose he would ever be sold, but one of my agents, who made the tour of Europe in the summer and autumn of 1881, in search of novelties for our big show, was so struck with the extraordinary size of the majestic Jumbo that he ventured to ask my friend, Mr. Bartlett, superintendent of the Zoological Gardens, if he would sell Jumbo. The presumption of my agent startled Mr. Bartlett, and at first he replied rather sarcastically in the negative. Further conversation led my agent to think that possibly an offer of $10,000 might be entertained. He cabled me to that effect, to which I replied, "I will give $10,000 for Jumbo, but the zoo will never sell him." 2 days afterwards my offer of $10,000 was accepted. From that time an excitement prevailed and increased throughout Great Britain which, for a cause so comparatively trivial, has never had a parallel in any civilized country. The newspapers, from the London Times down, daily thundered anathemas against the sale, and their columns teemed with communications from statesmen, noblemen, and persons of distinction advising that the bargain should be broken at all risk, and promising that the money would be contributed by the British public to pay any damages which might be awarded to Barnum by the courts. It is said that the Queen and the Prince of Wales both asked that this course should be adopted. I received scores of letters from ladies and children, beseeching me to let Jumbo remain, and to name what damages I required, and they should be paid. All England seemed to run mad about Jumbo, pictures of Jumbo, the life of Jumbo, a pamphlet headed Jumbo Barnum, and all sorts of Jumbo stories and poetry, Jumbo hats, Jumbo collars, Jumbo cigars, Jumbo neckties, Jumbo fans, Jumbo polkas were sold by the tens of thousands in the stores and streets of London and other British cities. Meanwhile, the London correspondents of the leading American newspapers cabled columns upon the subject describing the sentimental Jumbo craze which had seized upon Great Britain. These facts stirred up the excitement in the United States, and the American newspapers and scores of letters sent to me daily urged me not to give up Jumbo. The editor of the London Daily Telegraph cabled me to name a price for which I would cancel the sale and permit Jumbo to remain in London. I cabled back as follows. My compliments to editor Daily Telegraph and British Nation. 51 millions of American citizens anxiously awaiting Jumbo's arrival. My 40 years' invariable practice of exhibiting the best that money could procure makes Jumbo's presence here imperative. £100,000 would be no inducement to cancel purchase. This dispatch was published in the London Daily Telegraph the next morning, and was sent by the London Associated Press to the principal newspapers throughout Great Britain, which republished it the following day, giving the excitement an immense impetus. Crowds of men, women, and children rushed to the zoo to see dear old Jumbo for the last time, and the receipts at the gates were augmented nearly $2,000 per day. A fellow or stockholder of the Royal Zoo sued out an injunction in the Chancery Court against the councillors of the zoo and myself to quash the sale. After a hearing which occupied 2 days, the sale was declared valid, and Jumbo was decided to be my property. The fateful day arrived when Jumbo was to bid farewell to the zoo, and then came the tug of war. The unfamiliar street waked in Jumbo's breast the timidity which is so marked a feature of elephant character. He trumpeted with alarm, turned to re-enter the gardens, and, finding the gate closed, laid down on the pavement. His cries of fright sounded to the uninitiated like cries of grief, and quickly attracted a crowd of sympathizers. British hearts were touched, British tears flowed for the poor beast so unwilling to leave his old home. My agent, dismayed, cabled me, "Jumbo has laid down in the street and won't get up. What shall we do?" I replied, "Let him lie there a week if he wants to. It is the best advertisement in the world." After 24 hours, the gates of his paradise were reopened and Jumbo allowed to return to his old quarters, while my agent set to work to secure him by strategy. A huge iron-bound cage was constructed with a door at each end and mounted on broad wheels of enormous strength. This, with the doors open, was backed up against the door entrance to Jumbo's den, and the wheels sunk so that the floor of the cage was on a level with that of the elephant's. A passageway was thus formed through which Jumbo must pass to reach the outer air. After much hesitation, he was persuaded to follow his keeper, Scott, through this cage to take his daily airing. For several days this ruse was repeated. Then, as he entered the cage, the door behind him was swiftly closed, then the door in front of him, and Jumbo was mine. Meanwhile, Jumbo came up in Parliament, where the President of the Board of Trade was questioned in regard to precautions being taken to protect the passengers on shipboard. Mr. James Russell Lowell, our American minister to the Court of St. James, in a speech given at a public banquet in London, playfully remarked, "The only burning question between England and America is Jumbo." On the morning of his capture, March 25, 1882, the wheels of his cage were dug free of the ground, 20 horses attached, and in comparative silence of the following night, Jumbo was dragged miles to the steamship Assyrian Monarch, where quarters had been prepared for him by cutting away one of the decks. The Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals hovered over Jumbo to the last. Entitled ladies and little children brought to the ship baskets of dainties for Jumbo's consumption during the voyage. After a rough passage, he arrived in New York in good condition. Sunday morning, April 9th, the next day was placed on exhibition in the menagerie department of our great show, where he created such a sensation that in the next 2 weeks the receipts in excess of the usual amount more than repaid us the $30,000 his purchase and removal had cost us. End of Jumbo Creates a Sensation by P.T. Barnum.